Hello guys and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are talking about Russia-Ukraine war impact on Europe economy. Before we continue our video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for more interesting videos. The economic knock-on effects of the Russian invasion of Ukraine are going to be felt throughout Europe. While the overall economic fallout is still difficult to predict, the impact will be different for different member states. This brief takes a very first look at potential differences in exposure, focusing on direct trade links, potential costs of energy dependence on Russia, and vulnerabilities towards rising energy prices more generally. It shows that the EU's member states' economic vulnerability to the Russian invasion of Ukraine is very unevenly distributed. To cushion the economic blow and ensure political unity, the EU will need to share some of the economic burden of this crisis. The economic knock-on effects of the Ukraine war are going to be felt throughout Europe. Direct costs from sanctions and trade disruptions, rising inflation due to higher energy and commodity prices, and mounting uncertainty will become a drag on Europe's economy. The overall economic costs of the war are still difficult to predict. However, the impact will be different for different member states. After the pandemic, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is yet another external economic shock with asymmetric consequences across Europe. This unequal distribution of the economic hardship across EU member states is not only an economic problem, it matters politically. Making sure that Europe sticks together in the coming months and possibly years in the face of Russia's aggression will require burden sharing to avoid some member states being affected much more than others. But which countries will be hit the hardest and why? This brief takes a very first look at potential differences in exposure across member states. It focuses on direct trade exposure, as well as the potential costs of energy dependence on Russia and vulnerabilities towards rising energy prices more generally. This first peek at the data reveals some important patterns. First, Central and Eastern European countries are especially vulnerable across a range of factors. This includes export dependence, reliance on energy imports from Russia, as well as a pronounced exposure to general price hikes for energy. Second, Germany and Italy stand out as countries that are heavily dependent on Russian gas, but also could be hit by supply shortages in the automotive industries. Third, the overall effect of rising energy prices differs across member states. While it would be especially hard to stomach for poorer countries in the East with colder winters, energy-intensive economies in Northern and Western Europe would also suffer disproportionately. As a result, it is likely that the EU will need to share this burden equally to keep political unity. Exposure to trade disruptions, low but concentrated. The war disrupts trade relations between the EU and Russia. The EU's direct trade sanctions are limited to specific sectors such as arms, dual-use goods, and the aviation and space industry. However, financial sanctions, and especially the ban of 7 Russian banks from SWIFT, will significantly increase trade costs outside the energy sector. For comparison, a full SWIFT ban on Iran reduced the country's trade by almost a third. In addition, we already see scores of companies severing or reducing relations with Russia, even in sectors that are not subject to sanctions, presumably due to skyrocketing reputational costs of continued business in Russia. What does this mean for the EU? Overall, trade relations with Russia play a minor role for Europe. Exposure to energy imports and rising energy prices. The second main channel by which the Russian invasion of Ukraine will affect the EU's economy is through rising energy prices. There are 2 ways in which member states will be impacted. First, through direct dependence on Russian energy imports. Second, through rising gas, oil and coal prices on global energy markets as a result of the current conflict. This section discusses these factors in turn. Dependence on energy imports from Russia. First, the EU relies heavily on energy imports from Russia. The EU imported about 23% of its oil, 40% of its natural gas, and almost 45% of its total coal imports from Russia. Importantly, while trade in other sectors has been declining since the annexation of Crimea and the start of the war in the Donbass in 2014, gas and coal imports have, in particular, remained on a steady climb since then. Conclusion: As this preliminary analysis shows, the EU's member states' economic vulnerability to the Russian invasion of Ukraine is very unevenly distributed. This holds for direct trade with Russia in non-energy goods, as well as for the dependence on Russian energy imports, and for the vulnerability to increasing energy prices on world markets. At the same time, keeping the 27 united in the response to Russia will be paramount in the months and potentially years to come. This will likely require burden sharing that takes these differences in vulnerability and economic fallout into account to avoid differential economic impact, potentially causing those member states hit hardest to drop out of the united front against Putin. That's all for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed our video. For more videos, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for more interesting videos. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful day.